Namaskar, friends. Welcome to this fresh episode of our channel, So You Soon. And this is our humble endeavor to bring you wonderful people, not just from India, but from across the world, and introduce a wonderful life journey to you. Today, we have a very special guest, a very close friend from the other side of the seven seas, as we popularly call it, from the wonderful country of Colombia. And he's situated out of Bogota. And, we studied together, just to give a brief introduction, together in a master's called NYU at NUS. And I had a wonderful time back then studying with a wonderful batch. And today, I think we are face to face almost after a decade, virtually though, in these times. And I hope that the world, we are all suffering from pandemic. It's behind us. And I wish all the viewers and all the listeners a quick recovery. If you are sitting at home, whatever part of the world you are in, I urge you to use sanitizers, use face masks, use as much precaution as possible, and maintain social distancing. With that wonderful note, let me welcome my dear friend Nicolás Pimiento. Nicolás, welcome to our program, Channel So You Soon, and warm welcome from this part of the world, and namaste from India.
Thank you so much, Jayant. Namaste. I still hold precious memories from the time I visited you. That whenever I go around, and so nice to have a friend who's lasted for so many years, even though we don't speak on a day-to-day basis, we know we're there for each other.
Thank you so much for that heartfelt memory. That was back in again at a decade ago. But having said that, we'll start with your journey here, because a lot of our young viewers are fresh graduates, young lawyers, and even people from who are not lawyers but want to be associated with the channel to get some legal knowledge. So before I start, I must tell that Nicolás is a man of many seasons. He's an adjunct professor in Colombia. He's an academician. He is an acclaimed lawyer. He's an arbitrator. He's a person who has extreme and deep love for law. He is involved in legal tech and AI, and all those questions we'll be throwing at Nicolás one by one. But before we start a series of questions and answer, we always ask a very basic question from our guest, is to please tell us something about your early education before you were a lawyer, and how did that help you and shape your career as a law, and what was that point in your life when you were a student, school-going person, that you decided that, okay, now I want to be a lawyer, and what prompted you and what inspired you then to pursue legal education in your life?
Yeah, Jayant. So it's a great question, because it brings me back to when I was in high school. And so I also looked up to my uncle, who was a lawyer. But really, I have to be honest with you, for me, it was a calling. I knew I wanted to be a lawyer since a very young age, and not a very clear reason. I guess like the fact that my uncle was a lawyer was part of it, but I think it was something that came from within, and it's also a matter of coincidences and opportunities. So let me give you an anecdote. What happened to me when I was finishing high school is that I come from a family of engineers, and the university in my hometown is well known for engineering. And I was supposed to study electronic engineering. I remember that perfectly. I had already passed the test. I was just about to get in, but something within me told me that I wanted to be a lawyer. So what I did is that I sent an email. I'm from Bucaramanga, which is on the east of Colombia, and Bogota, the capital, is where the best law schools are. So I sent an email to 3 universities, and one of them replied, and they forwarded my email to the president of the university, the rector, and he said, come on in. And that's how my life totally changed, and that's how I ended up being a lawyer. So I did. So my advice here is follow your call, even though your family or your environment or your context may want you to be something. After all, you can get your way around, and yeah, just an email. I mean, it wasn't that hard for me at the end.
Oh, very interesting. Before I go further, let me put a question to you to give a viewer a flavor of how legal education is taught in Colombia. How are the courses panned out? Because in India we have 2 types of legal education. You can become a lawyer by pursuing a degree called LLB, which is equivalent to a JD in America, both Latin America and in the Northern American continents. But we have something similar called LLB, and we have two type of programs. One is what you can do after you have gone to a university, you have performed your undergraduation, and then you can do a 3-year law program to become a lawyer, or something which I did, which is right after school, you go and do a 5-year law course. So we have these two structures prevailing in India. So we were, on behalf of our viewers, I would like to ask you, please tell us about your college life. What is the structure of LLB or JD that you have on your part of the world? And also the court structure. We will come to the court structure later when we will start with the legal journey, but with the education journey, if you can shed some light on that.
Sure. So here's the thing. So Colombia is a civil law country. It follows the French tradition. So people have to go for a law career starting right after high school. So it means 5 years, such as the course that you did, 5 years after high school, and it's all in law intensive. So you don't get, so you get extremely specialized in a way, but I guess in another way you don't get a broad view of things. But so that's if you want to be a lawyer, it's five-year course, and then you can do your master's or your PhD. And yeah, and the courses, the way it's, again, French tradition. So you have lectures, big lectures with, I remember I started with around 160 people, and we were all attending the same class. And yeah, so it was big lectures, and we have seminars on the side, and that was for 5 years. And in my law school, only in the 5th year, in the final year, you're able to specialize somehow, so to choose your own courses. So for me, it was basically giving, which at the end of the day, I think it's good in general, because you are a good lawyer. You can take, for instance, from labor law, from criminal law. So those are useful tools, but then when you go out, you need to specialize anyway, because you can't do anything in particular with the sufficient background. So that's the way it is in Colombia. Like, that's coursework.
Interesting. Before I come to your master's journey, where we also met, I'm going to ask you, because you have always been a very enterprising person. I've known you personally, and I've always known you to be, out there and be a go-getter. So let me discuss your journey in the law school. Were you able to do any internship when you were a law student? And if yes, what were the type of internships that you pursued, and what did it teach you as a young lawyer to be?
Sure. So in principle, you're supposed to do your internship in 4th year. But so that's my back then. My family was having financial trouble, so I had to start working at 2nd year, and that was at a law firm. So I was very lucky that I managed to work at a law firm. And what I did first, I started as a legal assistant. So I was doing whatever they wanted me to do, and basically going to the courts and looking into files, into documents, and so on and so forth. And then that was very useful for me, because I worked for them for 4 years. So little by little, I was acquiring high responsibilities, meaning that I was learning more and more and more. And that was also a great advantage for school, because I knew many things that many of my classmates didn't. So at the end of the day, it was great, because it was, in a way, it was feedback from one to the other. So I was learning at school, trying to apply it at work, and then learning at work and trying to apply it to school. And that was very useful to me. That kept me very busy. So I had to be very organized and very productive, because basically I was studying from 7 a.m. to 1 to 2 p.m. and then working from 2 p.m. to 7 or 8 p.m. and then every single day, Monday to Friday. So I had to be very organized, but I'm very lucky I had that, and I'm still very good friends with my bosses back then. Now they're colleagues. Yeah.
So another question that I have for you, I know it's quite basic, but what is the mode of legal education in Colombia? Is it taught in Spanish, or is it taught in English, or is it in both the languages?
Yeah, no, it's mainly taught in Spanish, but at my law school it varies. But you are supposed to learn a second language and take some courses in a second language. And the anecdote here is that I studied French, and I was supposed to go to France, because again, it's French tradition, and my law school is very traditional in that regard. So we have many agreements between my university and universities in France, but life coincidences took me to Singapore. But that's
right.
another story.
Yeah. So let's come to your Singaporean journey. What prompted you to come to Singapore? Because you were just talking about that you had plans to go to France because of the civil nature of jurisdiction of the two countries. So what made you come to this program NYU at NUS, and how different was it for you coming literally from Latin America and then to literally Southeast Asia? So two very different worlds. At least from Indian point of view, I can say we just have a 3-hour flight to Singapore, so it's close by. For us, it's close to home. But for you, you had to travel through multiple continents, and then it was a big decision. So how was that for you? Please tell us about that journey.
Yes. Again, it's kind of destiny taking you where it wants you to go. So here's the thing, and then sorry, there's some noise out here.
Yeah.
But can you hear me well?
All good. All good.
I think they're doing a land mowing here, but I think we just finished. No. Sorry.
Don't worry about it. I can hear
you. So here's what happened. I was finishing my law school, and back then I started to work as a teaching assistant as well. So again, I had to organize my time very well, and as a TA for the class was civil law. So I was a very traditional kind of scholar back then. And what happened is that I was doing all the paperwork to apply for a scholarship in France. And the professor who managed it, he said, and I had been working for it for 2 years or something. So I was ready to go, and I was basically leaving my place, and I said, like, perhaps you're too young, you're not ready for that. And I was like shocked, and that I was extremely sad. So that this was so I had been preparing since 2000, let me tell you, 4, and this was 2000, the end or the beginning of 2006. They told me that I was not, so I would have to wait 1 or 2 years because there were some other people in line. So I said, like, and I spoke to one of my mentors, the professor who took me on the moot court, the Inter-American Human Rights Moot Court. So he was very kind to me, and he was very understanding, and said, like, after all what you've done, and then after a moot court, I think you should consider studying at an American university. I think you can do it. You have the qualifications. And so, like, but I don't have the language. And back then, my English wasn't very, I mean, it's not good now, but it was really bad back then.
No.
So he said, no, you can do it. He was very encouraging. And that's something I really appreciated back then. So I think it was November, and the deadline for applying for universities was December. So it was crazy. I applied just as I could. Like, I did get a lot of time for it, like 2 weeks full time to apply for universities. And when I saw NYU, there was the option between Singapore and New York. Yeah, and then I said, like, no, Singapore sounds a lot more exciting. I didn't know much about Singapore then, but I said, like, no, it's really cool to go to Asia. And yeah, I've always had this adventure spirit. So I think I said, like, yeah, I can go. My logic was, I can go to New York. New York is not that far from home.
True.
Anytime, any other time in my life, but I don't think I can go to Singapore any other time. So I should do it now. So I did apply to Singapore. And I was very lucky I was accepted on the condition of learning the language, which I basically learned during the master's. But yeah, as Jayant might remember, but I love the experience. I love the friends. I've been very lucky and very fortunate. More than the academic experience, which was great, is the friends that you meet and the people you will see for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. How it bring back those great memories, because just so for our viewers also, I would tell them it was a very close batch. It was just about 45 students who were selected from the world over, and planning across different countries and continents. And it was wonderful, and when we started the course, I think it was first of a kind in the world. And then it started much before the fall season, for other universities. It was, I think, 1st or 2nd of May back in 2007 when the program was starting. And just to share my little experience with you, Nicholas, in fact, I just had a 1-day gap between my LLB and my master's, because on 30th of April, I was giving my Viva in India. One day, yeah. So 30th of April, yeah, 30th April, I was giving my Viva to my law school. And I told my director that I have a flight to catch on 1st of May because my LLM starts on 2nd of May. So I literally had a 6 year of, education back to back. And it was a very rigorous program, as you would know. So my follow-up question to you is this. I'm sure a lot many students from within Colombia and world over now would reach out to you for guidance, for mentorship. So what do you advise them? Do you think that an LLM is essentially a course that one must pursue? Because students, at least in India, ask me that would LLM give them a job? And my answer to them is, please don't do LLM for a job prospect. It's an academic degree. It's a good degree to have. But how do you advise young lawyers and young law students about pursuing a master's abroad?
Yeah, I think I always advise for it because I think the experience is great. And then you should pursue it for the experience and for the friends that you're going to meet, which are going to be your friends for life. Right. But of course, if you do it for the wrong reasons, for instance, for a job or for being distinguished as a master's from abroad, then it will give you nothing, and then you will have, I don't know, debt and regret. So I believe that having the experience abroad like really gives you the opportunity to experience new things and to talk to other people and to see life in a different manner, which it makes you a better person. And I think that's the main point, that you should go for your master's abroad. But other than that, it's not a ticket for for getting an automatic job or automatic position at the government. It doesn't work like that. I mean, you have to go for your own merits. And I know excellent careers that the education has been entirely in Colombia. So it really depends on the person, and you do your own career. But of course, for me, the LLM was a plus. And thanks to the LLM, I started to do, so I was doing basically civil law, which is contract law and commercial law. That's what I was doing back then. And thanks to the LLM, I started to work on international law, which is something I still do. So I'm really grateful for that opportunity, that it's because I met the professors there and you guys also, that was very interesting for me. I gained the English, which is the language for international law. So yeah, I mean, just do it if you want. Of course, if you want to pursue 100% domestic career, it doesn't make much sense. No, I mean, if you want to do, for instance, in Colombia, administrative law, well, it's good if you study abroad, but those knowledge will not exactly applicable to how it is in Colombia. So some people who work on public law, they do it great without doing their LLM. So it's not indispensable, but it's an asset, and more so a personal asset.
I think a wonderful narrative there, Nicholas, and I agree with you because you said a very nice thing. If you have debt, you will have regret. I think that is my takeaway from this, because what young lawyers and young budding lawyers don't understand is that a foreign education is very expensive, and irrespective of whatever part of the world one may be from, if you take an education loan and do not land up a job, especially depending on what type of economic crisis the world may be going through. In our time, I remember when it was just 2008, when we were graduating from a master's, there was a subprime crisis which emanated from US and was crippling the economy the world over. And then I think since last year, again, we are battling from a pandemic, and fresh graduates are grappling with job market. There is a hiring freeze across different industry and different verticals. So I think that's a very good advice. Now let's start with your legal journey. You've finished your NYU at NUS. So tell us now that you have returned to Colombia from Singapore, how was the journey for you? Because so far as I can imagine, I think for your first starting point was to join the Minister of Commerce, back in Colombia as an advisor, if I'm not wrong. So please tell us about that journey.
So what I did is, so I had some professional background from my position as a legal assistant, so that allowed me to understand it a bit better. So my advice for people is to, if you want to go for an LLM, first have some sort of experience. Sometimes I feel perhaps that I was a little, so maybe the professor was right, I was a little too young when we started, but I took the best out of the masters. And what I did is, right afterwards, I started international internships because I was interested in international trade and international arbitration. So what I did is I went first to the WTO in Geneva, and then as an intern, as a legal intern. And then after the WTO, I went to a law firm in Paris, which is called Freshfields. It's an international law firm.
Yes.
So I worked for them for a few months as well. And then right after that, I got back to Colombia and had a much better position. I mean, for what I could have gotten without it at the Ministry of Trade of Colombia. And that was a very interesting position because I was able to work in the negotiation of international treaties, so both free trade agreements and international investment agreements. So I was part of the negotiating team of the ministry, and I was part of the Directorate of International and Foreign Investment. So it was really interesting, and we were also dealing with potential cases. Back then, the Ministry of Trade was also managing the cases against Colombia arising from FTAs and international investment agreements. So that was very interesting. That was a great opportunity to begin with, and I started to get to know the public sector, which is also really interesting. It's a totally different world in its dynamics and the teachings that it can give you. But then I got the opportunity to get back to this same law firm, but not in Paris, but in Washington, D.C. So after a while being at the ministry, I got back to, I went to the US and I worked in the US for a little while.
Wow. So how was that experience? How different was it working, in Europe and then working in North America?
Okay, well, I mean, Europe was amazing because I was still an intern, and that's something that I didn't understand at the beginning.
Yes.
When you're an intern, life is, you don't get too many responsibilities, but then you get the excitement about being at an international organization, or you're in Paris, or so it really. I mean, I was having a lot of fun. I was partying a lot. I was also working a lot, but of course, without the responsibilities of a grown adult. And I thought, this is professional life. That's what I thought it was. But of course, internships are just internships at their limited time, and they won't give you the responsibility of an associate or a proper officer at an international organization. That being, so after, when I went to Colombia, then I was a public officer, and so it was more boring, more responsibilities, but I was settling down and I was back home, so it was good as well. But my real shock came when I started working as an action lawyer in the US. That really changed things. I think I was not expecting it. So the rhythm of work for a big law firm was, and I was working at the same law firm, but it was a different position. So when I was working as a foreign consultant, it was all-nighters, working during the weekends, having lots of things to do. So and the difference, for instance, with Colombia is that I was working in English, so I was not 100% proficient with the language, and that made a difference in terms of performance or the time that it took me to deliver some things. So it was tough, but it also taught me a lot. I mean, it made me a better professional. It made me work a lot, and so perhaps my difference, the difference between working in Europe and working in the Americas or working in the US was basically the types of responsibilities that I had. And of course, it was much higher in the US. And so that's something you have to be prepared for. Like it's one thing being an intern, and another very different thing being an officer and a consultant.
I think it's a wonderful derivative of how you have said, and how you have overcome the language barrier, if I may say so. Because even in India, though the legal education is still imparted by and large in English in most of the law schools, but people at home still speak the native language. Depending, they may, for example, I speak in Hindi, at home, and other people, depending on what part of the country they are from, they speak their own language. So similarly, even with a lot of Indian students, and I'm not talking from the top law school perspective, but let's say from the not so top law school perspective, still have this language hindrance. And I would believe that they would have such nice lessons to take away from the positivity that you just shared with us, that let nothing be a barrier to you, because you have to constantly work on yourself, especially as a young lawyer, and not just as a young lawyer, whatever you may choose to do in life, and how you can overcome it. Because you said that despite what people were telling you, that you are a young person, don't apply for masters. So as the saying says, there will always be naysayers. People will tell you what you cannot do. Yeah. And the idea is that you have to believe in yourself and keep going. And when you keep going, the experience that you get and the experience that life teaches you, is amazing. So with that, let me come to the next facet of your life, and you're back in Colombia. So please tell us about that legal journey that you embarked upon. And because I also know that you founded your own law firm, you have your own startup, you do a lot many things. So please, one by one, discuss about those wonderful facets of jurisprudence, both legal and technical, that you have been able to evolve in Colombia.
Sure. So the biggest lesson that my stay in the US taught me was because sometimes you want to learn what you want to be, but it's way more important to learn what you don't want to be. So then, I was not having a good time personally. I mean, it was very interesting professionally, and it was very well looked upon. I mean, people would say, oh, you work at this international law firm, international arbitration. So it sounds very nice, but I wasn't feeling well. And I realized that I didn't want to be that kind of lawyer. So I resigned, and I decided to get back to my home country. I decided to get back to Colombia. And I was working first for the Ministry of Justice. I was very fortunate because I was hired by the minister himself. I think the fact that I had this international background was attractive, I guess. So I was working for the minister's office. So it was a close team of around 6 people that we were being his main advisors. And I was doing many things, from writing speeches to working on bills at the Congress. So it was really extremely interesting. That was almost 2 years working for the Ministry of Justice. Extremely interesting journey also, because it also had politics, and it also had some technicalities as well, and the fact that you're in the public sector. So I really enjoyed it. But of course, since that's politics, it changes. And then after a while, I worked for 2 ministers, and then I went back to the Ministry of Trade for a technical position again. So dealing again with treaties and with public policy on the export of services. So that's what I was doing, and that will be 2013 and 14. That's like 8 years ago. So I got back to the Ministry of Trade. Back then, I was not an officer anymore. I was a consultant. So it was a interesting position. I was having particular projects and some support on treaty negotiation. And but I always had this goal that before 30, I will open my own independent practice. And since I knew that I didn't want to go for this, for the international law firm kind of thing, which, and I want to be clear, I mean, I'm not discouraging. I mean, it's great if you want to do it and if it's your thing, but you have to discover what's your thing. If you want to become a partner of a big firm, go for it. But you have to be entirely sure for it, because some people, they do it for 10 years, work 10 years at a law firm, they don't like it and they resign, but it's 10 years. So it's you try to find out what you want to do, the earlier the better. But so getting back to my point, so I wanted to open my own practice. I spoke to a friend of mine who was also working at the Ministry of Trade, and we decided that it was a good time to do it. So in 2014, we opened a small office right in front of the Ministry of Trade, because our idea was to work in both, to have the income as consultants and to see what new clients we could have gotten back then. That didn't work. I mean, it was too complicated to have both things. So at the beginning, after a few months, we had to do it on our own. And yeah, it was then I started to feel a bit anxious because it was the first time in my life that I was not getting regular income. And what I was doing is I was spending my savings. I was living out of my savings. So I was getting more and more and more nervous the first few months because, you know, it's the financial stability. And then after you've been a worker for so long, you get used to that. So after those 6 months, I talked to other people, to other friends to join the firm. We had to devise a new strategy for us to get new clients because, but you have to know that for sure at the beginning, it will be very few. I mean, and I don't know any person who's had started an independent practice with 100 clients. No, it doesn't. I mean, at least it wasn't my case. It's very difficult. So little by little, we devised a new strategy. We started to focus more on trade defense, which is something that I wasn't doing that much then. So I specialized in trade defense with one of the new colleagues at the firm, and we started to get cases on that. And the thing is that we wanted to find our niche. So if we wanted to do what many other lawyers did, it was way more difficult. I don't know, if we wanted to do contracts, corporations, criminal law, or labor law, you have literally in Colombia hundreds of thousands of people doing that. So, but trade defense, there weren't that many, and it required knowing more than one language, and it was a procedure before the Ministry of Trade, so I was familiar with that. So I had that niche, and that was very good at the end, and that's how the firm started to get good results. So trying to find our niche, that's how we did it, and yeah, I'm very lucky that it worked out.
Excellent, because I agree with you that whenever you're starting out, be it in any country, I mean the challenges that a young person faces in terms of finances, and when you're starting your own venture, be it a chamber practice, be it a law firm, you have to be dependent on your savings because you don't know when the next or where the next client is going to come from. So I think be it Colombia, be it India, be it Australia, be it any country, the challenges predominantly remain the same. And I think with this program, I'm also trying in my own limited way to explain to the world that people are not very different. I mean, the system may differ a little bit here and there, but the basic essence of humanity, still remains the same. Be it in Colombia or be it in India. I mean, we at the heart of our hearts are still one. So that is one thing. And just to ask you, because I remember when you had opened your law firm. And back then I was texting with you back in those years, and you had named it 1493. And it has a meaning to it. So if you can tell our viewers what's the meaning,
yes,
and why was that name chosen?
So that's the idea. So I had read this book of this American journalist and historian, and it shows. So I didn't want, because I had this experience from before, I didn't want to have the typical the last name in golden letters at the entrance of your office. It wasn't my thing. So we wanted to go for a number, and I started to think of a number, and 1493 was an interesting one because the main point of this book, and I recommend you to read it, it's 1493, is that globalization started not in the 20th century, as we have come to believe, when you see all of the multinationals and all of this exchange and trade and investment, but it started in 1493 with Columbus' voyage from America back to Europe. And the point is, it was the first exchange, and it was the first time you could connect commercially, like with trade, the Americas or the New World with the Old World. So the whole world was connected, and that's when globalization started. And since we wanted to specialize on trade and international affairs, that worked perfectly. So that's the catch that we wanted to do.
Wonderful story. Let me just now get back to my first question, which I asked you, at the start of the program, to tell our viewers a little bit about the legal hierarchy and the legal structure of courts in Colombia. And just to give you an example of Indian courts, we have a 3-tier system. We have district courts, Then we have the High Court, which is the first court of appeal. And then we have the apex court of the country called the Supreme Court. So basically a three-tier structure here. And then we have other tribunals where, by law they are created, and you can pursue the cases there, and then subsequently appeal to either a High Court or the highest court of the country, which is the Supreme Court. So this is the Indian structure. How does it work in Colombia?
So, okay, so the court system is kind of complex, but here it goes. So we have the first basis, which is the local courts or local judges. And depending on the amount in question, if it's a small amount, you go for those. Then you have circuit judges. So it's district kind of judges. So they have the second layer. Then you have tribunals. Superior tribunals. So if you appeal from a local judge, you will go to a circuit or a district judge. And then if the amount is higher, and then the case enters into the district court, then you will appeal to this tribunal. And then you have, the apex courts, but in Colombia, it's not just one. There are several depending on the specialty. So you have the Supreme Court for civil, criminal, labor matters. You have the Constitutional Court for constitutional matters. And you have the Council of State for public matters, matters involving the administrative or state issues. So so those are the three high courts of Colombia. But of course, depending on the case, you can go to either. So that's how it works.
Okay, and what is the language of courts there? Because in India, in the district courts, you can argue in local languages from whatever part of the country you are from in different district courts. But in High Court and in Supreme Court of the country, we have English as the language for,
okay, no, it's all Spanish. It's all Spanish, yeah. Even so, for instance, for indigenous people or for native Colombian people, they can have access to an interpreter, but it's the courts work in Spanish.
Very interesting. At least I think that's easier, because then you have one language throughout, throughout the structure. Interesting. So let me now ask you the next question, because you're also an adjunct professor. So please tell us about how did that happen? I mean, I know that you have always been inclined to give back to the society. And what all courses do you teach? Because I think it's been a long time that you've also been associated with one of the esteemed university in Colombia. So please tell us about that journey also.
Okay, so my journey as a professor is as follows. So I really like law in general. So I was kind of a geek, kind of a nerd of law. So I started as TA back in third year of law school, but that wasn't much work. So you had to do some minor research work for one of the professors, and you were part of a department. So I was part of the department of civil law. And then after that, you become a research assistant, which means that what I did when I was a research assistant was I wrote my degree thesis. After I finished law school, you write a thesis. So I wrote it, and I wrote several articles, and I helped professors. So that's basically when you start kind of writing. And I was hired as a professor when I came back to Colombia for the first time, when I was working on the Ministry of Trade. And in Colombia, some people say I would say at least 50% of the professors are not tenured professors, including myself. So there are adjunct professors, meaning that you can have either per hour or per diem kind of payment, or a part-time. So currently I'm a part-time professor, which it doesn't mean that you have to be, half of your time in the university, but you have to perform more things, and then you're supposed to do research and teach. So then I've taught many things because I've also changed. So I started with civil law. So I was teaching how to translate that, persons, like the regime of the legal person. And then the property law, that was that I taught for the first few years. And then I was moved to a different department. And the department is the international business affairs. So with international business law, I have been teaching international contracts, international arbitration, and then here and there I've been teaching international trade, but that I haven't done as much. It's more international contracts and international arbitration. And yeah, so what I did is I was all the time working and teaching at the same time, which is also good. I mean, same thing as I told you, what happened to me in law school. It's also really good because you're always keeping yourself updated, and then you learn a lot from your students because they know a lot. So then they're constantly trying to book your mind and your brain into new things, and the fact that you have to prepare a class makes you learn a lot. So then I that's what I've been doing for the last since 2009. I stopped when I went to the US for like, and then when I was working on the Ministry of Justice, I wasn't teaching either. But I will say that it's been like as a professor. I just this year I believe I got the how do you translate that, profesor titular, which means like that I am in the class, like I don't know, profesor titular. So it means that you've been there for over 10 years. So I've been
over a
teaching
decade. Yeah, over a decade. So you have spent substantial time there. So what do you prefer, being called an attorney or being called a professor, Professor Pimiento? I mean, what is your favorite terminology?
I like I just don't like. I mean, in Colombia they usually use doctor, no? Even
Okay.
if you're not, even if you're not a PhD, they call lawyers doctors, as they will call like medical doctors doctors. But I just don't like either. So usually people call me Nico. No, it's it's
Nico. That's what we call you also. Yeah, Nico.
Yeah. So it's. The thing is that the title of professor, doctor doesn't really match my face. Like people don't. So I had some clients that call me Don. O sea, they want to be respectful and they call me Don Nico, like Mr. Nico, which is nice. But I'm good with either. Of course, I feel much more honored when I'm called a professor than an attorney.
Wonderful. Now I have a follow-up question for you. I have also experienced, not that I've taught in universities for 10 years, but sometimes I do act, as a visiting faculty, or sometimes I'm giving lectures, whenever I have some free time, either through webinars or seminars, and different law schools or to young law students across, in the country here in India. And you rightly said, there's so many good questions which just crop up of the young minds, and they throw them at you. So my question to you is this: what do you find most stressful, being a lawyer when you have to face either an arbitrator or a judge, because they can also throw random questions at you, or when you're teaching a class when you may have prepared a chapter otherwise, but these young law students, because they're very, very smart, so they will throw direct questions at you. So which do you find more challenging and more stressful?
Yeah, I think it's more challenging with students actually, because as a professional, you can always prepare, and there, or if you're an arbitrator, you will have the chance to issue your award, and then that's it. So it's a separate document. It's not you facing the person. And I used to be very stressed out at the very beginning, but I think it was a matter of I was immature back then, and I didn't understand that professors can be wrong, and I can be wrong, and and it's okay for me to say, sorry, I don't know, I will have to look it up. Thank you for your question. It's very cunning. It's amazing, but I really don't know. Let me come back to you later, which works much better than when you make up the answer, or when you start up like very nervously, or you just shut the person up. No, it's just a matter of understanding that, of course, I mean, you're a professor, but you know everything, and you're entitled not to know everything. It's I mean, you're in the same journey, that you're just like one step ahead of, not even, sometimes not even, but like one step, this bit much. A friend of mine once told me, the only thing you need, because at the beginning you're very nervous about it, but, and he said, like, the only you need to be a good professor is to know just this tiny bit more than the students, and then you can work it out from there. And so that's how I do it, and I try to be very honest when I don't know the answer. And sometimes they have taught me, and then I remember this case. I was teaching international franchise, for students in Cali, Colombia, in one of the cities of Colombia. and he had applied and done the whole process for a franchise in McDonald's. So he knew everything. So at some point, I just sat down and listened to him. He knew much more than I did because he had been working on a franchise for years. So I mean, who am I to contradict him? He knew a lot more. So that's when I'm very lucky to be a professor because I can learn from my students. So yeah.
Wonderfully put, Nico. I agree with you there because with learning can only come with humility. You have to be accepting to the terms that as human beings you don't know everything, and I think that's a wonderful experience that even I have encountered when you are delivering a lecture or going to a classroom, that you have to be open to learning yourself, because learning again is a two-way street. Till the time you're not receptive and open to learning, especially as a lawyer, I would say, then I think it's the start of downfall, for the person individually. So having said that, let me come to my next question. You have also started a legal tech startup, Redek, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah,
Please tell us something about that startup, and what
well,
prompted you to
right.
venture into
No,
legal tech.
okay, I was very comfortable as a lawyer. So after 1493, I was offered a position at a different law firm, also as a partner in Bogota. So I took that position, and I've been there for 5 years, so which is the longest I've been at any job. And it's amazing, but it was comfortable. It only stopped being comfortable during the pandemic in 2020. So let me give you a bit of background. When I was working for the Ministry of Justice, I started this a new project which was called online arbitration. So I started to do all the research on ODR, and I was the government took me to meetings on ODR, and I started to learn about ODR, and I was convinced that online dispute resolution, that's what ODR stands for, was the future of justice. So I continued to work on it, even though I left the ministry. I was doing it both at the Ministry of Trade. I was doing, even though it was not related at all to my job, I was doing ODR, and then at my firm, and then at the universities. So I was in seminars, and then we were working on these rules for online arbitration, model rules for online arbitration in Colombia. And then I continued to work on it over the years. So in 2018, my home university, Externado, invited me for a TEDx talk on ODR. I delivered the speech, and then they really liked it and said, no. And then I remember that my dad told me, you really have to work on this. I mean, you're just talking about it, but you're not doing anything. It just came as a good piece of advice, but I was still doing my thing at my law firm. But with the pandemic, many clients were frozen for a while, and because people didn't know what to do, I would say April, May 2020, there was a lot of uncertainty. And one of those afternoons, I thought, okay, maybe I should follow my dad's advice on this and start uh, like move things from just the theory to practice, because I've been preaching about ODR for 9 years, but yeah, it was always talking about it and going to conferences, and then no, maybe I should do it. And it's been an amazing journey. I mean, I started to do baby steps at the end of 2020. I launched it 2 weeks ago, yeah, that just very recently. It's called Redek, and it's in Spanish, Red means this electronic dispute resolution. Red means electronic dispute resolution. So it's the main concept of ODR, how to adapt ODR for the needs of a company, of a public institution, and of arbitration on mediation centers. So how to do all of that to solve disputes online. And yeah, it's been amazing. It really surprises me because the people are really craving for this, and they really find it useful. So I've been in the middle of meetings and things that I wasn't expecting. I thought it was going to be something on the side, but as I told you, more, I would say now like 70% of my time I'm dedicating it to this. So what I started to do is I started to set some clients aside. So just have a very few cases and clients, and then the rest trying to do this. And of course, it's a startup and it's a new experience and see how it goes. It's a lot of risk as well because I'm changing my status quo, but I feel also very happy because I'm getting out of my comfort zone and trying to do something that I really enjoy, that I really believe in, and that I think it has great future. So why not?
That's wonderful, because this is something which is, I think, thing for the future, and especially digitization during pandemic is something that even I think India and other countries are also looking at. My follow-up question, to you both as a lawyer and both, now that you start up on the techno-legal side, is that how do you think that in this pandemic, how has one technology evolved to assess the legal proceedings, and especially how the Latin American countries are incorporating the legal technology in its legal and governmental setup? How crucial do you think it's going to be?
Yeah, I read these statistics that technology was accelerated 6 times due to the pandemic, and more so communication technology was absolutely accelerated, and that's how I saw an opportunity here, because whenever and I tried to do, I mean, it's not that I didn't try to do anything related to ODR before, but when I pitched the making an electronic platform for dispute resolution on secure transactions to the chambers of commerce of Colombia, they said, like, you know, we have budget limitations. I mean, it's not our priority. We're not gonna do it now. So I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, I understand, and I'm telling you, that's something I tried to do in 2017, more or less. 20. So it didn't work back then. But what happened also during the pandemic, that I was getting a lot of calls for conferences and seminars on ODR because people saw that the only option they had, the only choice, if they wanted to move justice forward, to move arbitration forward, mediation forward, was to do it online, such as we are right now. I mean,
Correct.
It's and they said, like, it's the only possibility. And then I said, like, I need not. I mean, of course, webinars are great, but what if we do something concrete, and we start with particular projects? And yeah, we had this at the end of 2020, and we just finished a project with the Office of the Attorney General, which is in Colombia, it's the control mechanism for the rest of the state. So they're basically the inspectors of what others are doing, and they have conciliation centers. And we implemented this in the civil conciliation center. They really like them, and we see that it's getting some momentum, no, some people getting into it, and yeah, you have to take advantage of the opportunities and start moving yourself. So and the reception, it's been, to me, it's very surprising, because I thought, oh, maybe I'll have 1 or 2 projects, and it's like 1, 2, 3. Then it's overwhelming, but also very exciting. And yeah, why not? If there's a chance and I can take it, of course, it's I'm measuring my risks as well. I don't, for instance, that's why I continue teaching, because I want to have my regular income, and I haven't dumped all of my cases. I'm not gonna leave the firm right now. No, I mean, step by step. But yeah, the more I do it, the more I think I'll have to limit myself on other areas. But yeah, let's see.
That's wonderful, Nico, because we need pioneers like you, to think of ideas, and ideas is something which takes the world over, especially when we speak of technology. And now, speaking of technology, I have a follow-up question for you. You have worked extensively, and you are still continuing to practice on the legal tech side and online dispute resolution, as we just mentioned. So, what do you think are some of the best practices, which are or which can be adopted the world over? Not just in Latin America, but even in India, for example. Because why I ask you this question is, last year when India was hit with pandemic in March 2020, and now we are struggling with the second tsunami of this pandemic, our courts did go virtual. but we still have the problem of last mile reach and connectivity of justice, because then there are villages, there are smaller towns, where there is either internet connectivity issue and all that. So how do you think we as lawyers of the world, the new lawyers of the world, so as to say, can solve this problem? Because I know that is something you have shared. Maybe, after the session, we'll speak offline also, and then maybe I'll try to pick your brain. But just for, to give a brief overview to our listeners here, how do you think that the world can come together and adopt legal tech, not just, and I'm not talking of a country here. When we speak of arbitration, we are talking of cross-country arbitration. We are talking of international arbitration. We are talking of institutional arbitrations. So how can we embrace, and, so far as we lawyers are concerned, our industry traditionally has been very anti-technology. We don't touch technology, right at the go. So how do we bring about the change in the thought process?
Sure. No, I understand your concern because it's my same concern, Jayant. So I agree with you that technology is changing the world in general. I mean, we've been changed by technology. The way we were as kids, it changed totally the way we are as adults because of technology, because of the fact that we have a computer, we have a camera, and we have internet. And um, and I think it changed for the better. I think we have better opportunities, better options. The fact that you are in India and that I'm Colombia and we can communicate,
Right.
it's a wonderful thing. It's also, it makes a better world. I mean, that this wouldn't have been possible, I don't know, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, had I traveled all the way to India, or you had come all the way to Colombia. So I think technology brings in itself a huge opportunity. Of course, there are huge technology gaps in the world, and of course we are aware of both of us coming from developing countries. The connectivity in Colombia is reaching, I don't know what's the rating in India, but in Colombia is reaching 65% more or less. So you have still 35% of people who don't have access to internet. But then again, let me give you other numbers. The What you have in Colombia in terms of access to justice is that 4 out of 5 people then don't have access to justice, even if they want it, because it's way too complicated or too expensive, or too far. And sometimes if you want to get to a court, it's too far. So you have only 20% access to justice. So if you put just the part that you have right now with connectivity, that 65% is way more than people have now. And it's a huge opportunity. And you cannot underestimate the fact that people have, there are more cell phone lines in Colombia than population, than inhabitants. So at the end of the day, people tend to look into the darker side of the more pessimistic side, like, yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot to do. Of course there is, but the opportunity it poses is tremendous, and the way that access has been given to people in the last few years, it's been amazing. So I guess we'll get more and more connectivity. People with the pandemic and the politicians are getting a higher, even higher sensitivity of the need to have access to internet for many people, and then how to connect it with access to government services, including justice. So what can we do? No, that's your question. So that what can we do? Well, in my case is to continue to promote it and to make it real. If I can do this for the Chamber of Commerce of Bucaramanga, my hometown, if I can have some people in a faraway town from Santander using the system to connect one or to solve one dispute, I think that's it. I mean, that's my mission accomplished. Of course, I cannot change, and I don't aim to change my country. It's way too complicated, but I can do 1 or 2 things within my possibilities. Of course, my possibilities are now linked to ODR, and that's why also I wanted to change from just preaching and talking about it to bringing it, to have the technology to create the platform. But of course, if you are, I don't know, a student, You can still do many things by trying to connect with someone who's in need of legal advice and send an email for him. And that's not that difficult. You talk to the person and then you send the email, say requesting or trying to protect the rights, however it is. But then you're using technology in the way you can. I mean, you need to of course change the world and go to the United Nations. No, you just need to do whatever you can with the opportunities you're given. Um, and that's my point. I mean, if now I'm in the position to try to create technology, and that's what I'm trying to do. But if Jayant, if you end up being the president of India or the prime minister of India, well, you can change it from that position. Uh, you, but you can always find a way. It's just trying to look into your current position and see, okay, what can I do? And there's for sure there's something you can do.
I think very wonderfully put, Nico, because change starts here and change starts now, and it starts with us. Because till the time we even do not attempt to, as you rightly said, it may be in the remotest village of your hometown or your village, that one life has to see a positive change. And I think that is something that you are wonderfully doing. And I hope, we can perhaps collaborate, and think how to take this forward. While we are reaching towards the end of our session, I would also like to ask whether there are any internship opportunities, let's say from students from India who would like to intern either under you or your friends or any department in Colombia. Just one, because I think we have seen how fast technology is changing. We also see how technology is demolishing the barriers which used to exist earlier. Today, seamlessly we are connected, though there are time differences. That is something, geographical, we can't change that. But you are there, I'm there. We have 9.5 hour time gap, but we're still talking seamlessly. So similarly, perhaps we can also think of some Colombian students to offer them internships or programs in India, and similarly a reciprocal arrangement for Indian students to be in Colombia. One, to understand, because I think the basic fabric of society remains the same, as I was speaking earlier. So maybe there's something that we can definitely think about and work on for student exchange program, either amongst universities here or in different sector of the legal industry. But having said that, as a closing comment, I would like you to give some valuable advice. We have been so positive throughout the session, and the nuggets of wisdom that you have shared with us through your walk of life. But in the conclusion, I always request my guests to say something for the youth. And when I say youth, I just don't mean a physical age. I also mean people who are young at heart and young in mind. So what's your advice for them?
Okay, so what's worked for me, I mean, and it's try to listen to that inner voice. I mean, it sometimes those coincidences take you to where you're supposed to be. And then I've heard that voice when I needed to go to law school, when I needed to go to NY US, when I wanted to start my job at the Ministry of Justice, and so on and so forth. And when I discovered ODR, I felt it, and I felt it when I wanted to open Redek. So it's that intuition that people don't tend to think of that much. It really tells you things, and then if you let yourself be moved by it, then you realize, okay. When you try to force otherwise, when you try to go against the current, and then when you feel it's wrong, and then it's too much of an effort, then don't go for it. I mean, life it's not that complicated for you to be stressed out, or and then if you feel that you're being too stressed out, it's not your thing, and then you move to another direction, and it's not bad. It's not a failure. It's a success, actually. I mean, like going in a different direction sometimes it's just a success, even if it's not law. I mean, if you don't like law that much, it's fine if you leave law. I mean, it's totally fine. So listen to that inner voice, and it sounds very in the clouds, no. It's very difficult to, but it's true. I mean, it's the way I feel it, then just try to make it more concrete. It's like something in like here,
in
like
your gut.
Yeah, and then it's like done. And then it's, so try to listen to it.
Oh, wonderful! Thank you, Nico, for being with us for this wonderful 1 hour. I know I've taken your billable hours away from you for this 1 hour, but I'm sure you'll make it up by billing it to your clients. But wonderful having you, and to all our viewers, be it in Colombia, be it in India, be it in any part of the world, I urge you that if you think that this legal awareness series that we have started is benefiting you or the people that you know, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And until next time, please take care and see you soon.